Hey guys, how's it going? Master Cow here, and today I'm going to be doing the 14th video for my 2021 NFL offseason recap series, the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings continue their sequence of making the playoffs and then missing the playoffs in the following season. They've made the playoffs in all of the odd years under Mike Zimmer as head coach in 2015, 2017, and 2019, and they've missed the playoffs in the even years. So will that cycle continue? If it does not, that could very well result in the firing of Mike Zimmer potentially by next season. So the Vikings did have one notable coaching change. Their offensive coordinator, Gary Kubiak, last year, they brought him out of retirement, elected to retire again. Health reasons were what caused him to retire as a head coach after the Broncos won the Super Bowl in the 2015-2016 season, and health issues will do so again. The Vikings will promote from within to replace him, as his son Clint, who was the quarterback's coach, is now going to be the offensive coordinator. And Clint has said that he's not just going to use his dad's playbook, he's going to add his own twist onto it, so we'll see how it does. The Vikings last year were actually really good offensively, so Kubiak's system did a good job. And I guess we'll see if Clint can maybe make a few modern tweaks to it, but as long as it isn't overly changed and as long as he's a competent play caller, the Vikings should be in line for another good offensive season next year. So the free agents that Minnesota retained, they didn't do a whole lot in that area. Swing tackle Rashad Hill was re-signed to a one-year deal worth just under $2.4 million. It's fully guaranteed. Guard Dakota Dozier, who's been a part-time starter the past few years, they re-signed him to a one-year deal worth $1.075 million. Running back returner Amir Abdullah was brought back on a one-year deal worth $990,000. And wide receiver Chad Beebe was brought back as a restricted free agent on a one-year deal worth $920,000. They didn't have a whole ton of free agents to begin with, but yeah. Their free agent signings, they signed former New York Giant Dalvin Tomlinson to a 2-year contract. It's worth $21 million, maximum value of $22 million. It's almost completely guaranteed. $15.9 million is fully guaranteed at signing, while the rest of it vests into full guarantees later. Tomlinson is one of the best run defenders in the game, and the Giants wanted to re-sign him, but they didn't have room to afford both him and Leonard Williams, who both needed new contracts this offseason, so they chose Williams, who had a breakout year from a pass rushing standpoint, and let Tomlinson walk. And so he gets a pretty nice deal from the Vikings. And they get him, and they'll get to pair him with Michael Pierce, another really good run defender of the middle. Longtime Arizona Cardinal corner Patrick Peterson signed a one-year deal worth a fully guaranteed $8 million. Peterson isn't the elite number one corner that he once was back with Arizona, as he's dealt with some suspensions and injuries since then, along with the fact that this is going to be year 11. But he's still pretty solid, and he'll provide some good veteran leadership for a Vikings cornerback room that needs some of that, especially after last year. They signed defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson to a one-year deal worth $3.6 million, $3 million guaranteed. Richardson returns to Minnesota. He played for them in 2018, and then he left for a 3-year deal the following offseason with the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland released him this offseason after bringing in Jadeveon Clowney, and so Minnesota was like, hey, we'll bring him back. And Richardson has still been a pretty dependable defensive tackle through the past few years. Cornerback Bashaud Breeland, who spent the past 2 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, he signed a one-year deal worth $3 million. $2.075 million of that is guaranteed. He's been Kansas City's number one corner the past couple of years, and he's done pretty well for himself. Free agency hasn't been kind to him ever since he failed a physical after agreeing to a 4-year deal with, I think, the Panthers in the 2018 offseason. He's had to settle for one-year deals in 4 consecutive offseasons. But he still does pretty well, although he has had off-field issues on his resume, including one that got him a 4-game suspension open last season. Another reunion as they signed defensive end Stephen Weatherly to a one-year deal worth $2.5 million with $500,000 guaranteed. Weatherly spent last year with the Panthers. He missed about half the year due to injury and was released. And he returns to Minnesota, where he spent his rookie contract as a 7th-round draft pick. Former Cowboys safety Xavier Woods signed a one-year deal worth $1.75 million, $1.5 million of it guaranteed. Woods has been pretty solid for Dallas the past few years. Not great, but not really terrible either, so he's a nice signing for Minnesota. Linebacker Nick Vigil, former Charger and Bengals, signed a one-year deal worth $1.75 million, up to $2.25 million, $1.05 million guaranteed. And he's been in and out of the starting lineup the past probably 3, maybe even longer years with LA and Cincy. And he'll have a shot at competing for a role this year. Yet another reunion as cornerback Mackenzie Alexander signed a one-year veteran minimum contract. Alexander spent last year with the Bengals, and the former Vikings second-round pick also returns this year. So that's 3 defensive reunions in Richardson, Weatherly, and Alexander. They signed former Jaguars receiver D.D. Westbrook to a one-year deal worth $1.1275 million, so veteran minimum. Westbrook's coming off, I believe, an ACL tear, but he suffered with Jacksonville during the middle of last season, and he's been pretty good throughout his career, so he'll add some depth to that receiving room and can look to push for a bigger role. Cornerback Ty Smith signed a one-year deal worth $990,000. Cornerback Perry Nickerson signed a one-year deal worth $920K after being non-tendered by the Packers as a restricted free agent. Kicker Greg Joseph signed a one-year deal worth $780,000. He's kind of bounced around the league with the Browns and the Buccaneers and the Titans and maybe other teams. And then they signed tackle Evan Kasizerzik, I think that's how it's pronounced, to a one-year deal worth $660,000. And cornerback Amari Henderson to a one-year deal worth $660K. They also added offensive lineman Cole Cabral off of waivers from the Houston Texans. For their cuts, they released lifelong Viking Kyle Rudolph. He's been with them since, I believe, 2013, I believe so. And he was released this offseason for cap savings. The Vikings didn't have a lot of cap room to work with. And also this year he was kind of being phased out of the pass catching element and was moved into more of a blocking role. So the Vikings didn't want to commit that much for him. And he signed a 2-year deal with the New York Giants. Left tackle Riley Reif, he signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year's first-round pick Jeff Gladney, who unfortunately was involved in a pretty serious off-field issue. He was indicted on third-degree felony assault, and so the Vikings cut him the day after the news broke that it was either the day of or the day after the news broke that he was indicted, and he passed through waivers as expected. Defense tackle Shamar Stephen, and he signed with the Denver Broncos. Last year's kicker Dan Bailey, and tight end Hale Hentges was placed on the reserve retired list. For their free agent losses, safety Anthony Harris, who was their franchise tag player last year, signed a one-year deal with the Eagles. He had a down season, which led to him taking a fairly inexpensive deal to try and rebuild his stock with Philly. Number 3 linebacker Eric Wilson also joined the Eagles. Linebacker Todd Davis, who they added after the injury to Anthony Barr last season, he has retired. He actually signed a deal with the Giants, but retired a few days after signing that. This was just recently. Jaleel Johnson, who was a starter after Michael Pierce's opt-out, signed with the Houston Texans. Center Brett Jones signed with the Broncos. Backup quarterback Sean Mannion signed with the Seahawks. Linebacker Hardy Nickerson signed with the Houston Texans. Running back Mike Boone was non-tendered as a restricted free agent. He signed with the Broncos. Edge rusher Ifeadi Odenigbo was non-tendered as a restricted free agent, and he signed with the Giants. He had kind of a mini breakout year in 2019, but didn't do much last year. And then cornerback Chris Jones was non-tendered as an exclusive rights free agent, and he signed with the Titans. Safety George Iloka is their only unsigned free agent as of this point. So as far as trades go, the Vikings traded for center Mason Cole from the Arizona Cardinals, giving up just a 6th-round pick. Cole was a full-time starter in his rookie year in 2018 and then last year in 2020, but he hasn't been very good otherwise, and the Cardinals upgraded the center position this offseason, and after doing that, they traded Cole away to the Vikings. The Vikings also traded away another one of their former first-round picks. 2018 first-rounder Mike Hughes was traded and with alongside a 2022 seventh round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 6th round pick in 2022. Hughes' career has been derailed by injuries, and so hence the low return for him, and also the Vikings adding a bunch of other names to the cornerback room in this offseason. Now on to the Vikings draft picks. Minnesota would wind up trading back from 14th overall to 23rd overall. The New York Jets moved up to select Elijah Vera Tucker and gave up both their 3rd round picks as part of the move there. And so, and with that 1st round pick, they took Virginia Tech left tackle Christian Darrisaw. With the 2nd pick in the 3rd round, the Vikings took quarterback Kellen Mond. With the 14th pick in the 3rd round, they took UNC linebacker Chaz Surratt. With the 22nd pick in the 3rd round, the Vikings took Ohio State guard Wyatt Davis. And with the 26th pick in the 3rd round, they took running back Kenny Nwangwu. The Vikings did not have a 2nd round pick because of them trading for Yannick Ngakoue before the season started. However, they would wind up trading Ngakoue during the season to the Ravens, picking up a 3rd round pick, and that's where they got Jones. So that's why the Vikings had 4 3rd round picks and no 2nd round picks, because of the Ngakoue trade and because of trading back in the draft. With the 14th pick in the 4th round, they took running back Kenny Nwangwu. With the 20th pick in the 4th round, they took cornerback Cameron Bynum. With the 29th pick in the 4th round, which is a pick they got from Buffalo as part of the Stephon Diggs trade in the 2020 offseason, they took edge rusher Janarius Robinson. With the 13th pick in the 5th round, they took receiver Emir Smith-Marset. With the 24th pick in the 5th round, they took tight end Zach Davidson. And with the 15th pick in the 6th round, they took defensive tackle Jalen Twyman. Minnesota did not have a 7th round pick because they had to forfeit it because of salary cap violation during the 2019 season. I think it involved like a practice squad player or something. The Vikings have not signed any players to extensions as of yet. Reports emerged probably, I'd say, about 3 weeks ago that they were working on new deals for Harrison Smith and Brian O'Neill, so we'll see if those guys get new deals anytime soon. For the Vikings' injuries, Twyman, unfortunately, was shot 4 times in the back while in Washington, D.C., and he is expected to make a recovery, but he's not going to play football this season as Minnesota has waived him with a non-football injury designation. So he'll spend all this year on the NFI list, and he'll look to work his way back and carve out a role in 2022. And wide receiver Olabisi Johnson has suffered a torn ACL, so that's brutal news for him because he was definitely in the mix to compete for the number 3 receiver spot in Minnesota. So my thoughts on the Vikings offseason. Again, the theme of the offseason was reunions, as Minnesota brought back 3 players who had been on their defense in recent years after spending time with other teams, and that was likely influenced by the fact that Minnesota was horrible offensively last year, just really, really bad, and that was a big reason why they started off the 2020 season really poorly. They almost dug themselves out of it, but weren't quite able to, as they missed the playoffs, I believe, by 1 game to the Chicago Bears, and they'll hope to avoid such a slow start this year. Again, offensively, the Vikings looked very, very good, and especially and this year the Vikings focused more on adding reinforcements to the offensive line on offense when they did address it, because they mostly spent most of their attention on defense. But they turned a position which was a weakness the past few years into a strength, because now they've invested a number of high draft picks into the offensive line. Garrett Bradbury, first rounder in 2019, Darrisaw, first rounder this year. Ezra Cleveland, a 2nd round pick last year, so the Vikings running game should certainly be really well, and as a whole, I think the offense is pretty good. You can't really ever go wrong with a really good offensive line. So the question for Minnesota is, will their defense be able to be fixed? Will these veteran players and maybe some of the young rookies like Surratt and Jones and Robinson be able to help them out and make their way back to the playoffs? The positions of need I listed for the Vikings, I listed guard, defensive line, and safety. Guard was definitely addressed. They brought back Dozier. They traded for Cole, who can play the interior, and of course taking Wyatt Davis in the 3rd round, which is a bit of a steal, I think. There were some mocks that had Davis going as high as the 1st round, so certainly getting him there, it was pretty good value. Defensive line, yeah, that was definitely addressed. That was a position of need after they hemorrhaged because they were hemorrhaging yards on the ground, because last year Danielle Hunter was injured, Everson Griffin was released, Linval Joseph was released, and Michael Pierce opted out, so their defensive line was really bad last year, and they made a point to fix it this offseason with Tomlinson and Weatherly and Richardson. And then safety was addressed with Xavier Woods. Their secondary needs, I listed corner and linebacker. And corner, yeah, because Gladney was really bad as a rookie, and then obviously had the off-field incident. And yeah, they did address that with Peterson and Breland and Alexander and even Bynum. And then linebacker, yeah, they did attack that. They drafted Surratt, and then they added Vigil in free agency. So I think the Vikings did a pretty solid job of addressing the needs that they have. And now it's just a matter of seeing how they put it together on the field. So closing with the Vikings' projected starters. Quarterback, it'll be Kirk Cousins, of course. Although with the drafting of Kellen Mond, the question is now Cousins has 2 years left in his current contract, so is that how much time he has left in Minnesota, and are they going to turn things over to Mond in 2023? We'll have to see how that plays out the next couple of years. Dalvin Cook will return to start at running back. Darisaw will start right away at left tackle. Ezra Cleveland will start at left guard. Bradbury at center. Right guard will be a competition. Dozier is a candidate there. Wyatt Davis could look to start right away, and possibly Cole, but I think the Vikings would prefer to have Cole be the backup center. And then O'Neal at right tackle. Wide receiver will be Adam Thielen, Offensive Rookie of the Year runner-up Justin Jefferson, and then the number 3 will be between, right now it'll be between Westbrook and Beebe. Irv Smith Jr. at tight end. For their defensive line, it'll be Danielle Hunter, whose contract issue has been resolved. The Vikings will have to decide next year whether to sign him to a lucrative extension, trade him, or release him, because he's going to have a pretty large cap hit next year in the form of a huge roster bonus. Hunter's been one of the league's more underrated pass rushers, and he was recently getting upset with his contract, especially seeing guys like Myles Garrett and Joey Bosa get really lucrative contracts. And despite missing all of last year due to a neck injury, he'll have to look to play it out and see. Defensive tackle will be Pierce, who's back from his opt-out, and then Tomlinson, and then I think edge rusher 2 will be between Weatherly and Jones. Linebacker, Anthony Barr, who's back from the torn ACL. Barr also restructured his contract this offseason, and his will allow him to be a free agent after this season. Eric Kendricks at middle linebacker, and then the linebacker 3 will go between Surratt, Nick Vigil, and possibly Troy Dye as well. Cornerback, Peterson is definitely going to be the number 1. The number 2 corner, I think, will be a competition between Cameron Dantzler, who played well as a rookie last year, and then Breland. And then Alexander should reprise his role in the slot. And at safety, definitely Harrison Smith, and then Xavier Woods. Vikings are also going to have a competition at kicker this offseason between Joseph and undrafted rookie free agent Riley Patterson. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next offseason recap video.